This is English shorthand dictation number 265 and the dictation speed is 120 words per minute. Ready? Start. We associate globalization with the free movement of capital, labor, goods and services across national borders. However, these parameters of economic globalization cannot be viewed in isolation from other aspects such as the free exchange of ideas and practices. Especially from the viewpoint of developing nations, the benefits of increasing foreign investment in any particular sector should be assessed not only in terms of capital flows and wealth creation but also in terms of technology transfer and the infusion of know-how and best practices. From this perspective, the legal systems in various countries have a lot to learn from each other, both in terms of institutional design and the evolution of substantive laws. However, there have also been some arguments made against the free exchange of ideas and practices between legal systems of different countries. In this note, I would like to briefly comment on the linkages between increasing globalization and the law. One approach for examining these linkages is to survey the legal challenges thrown up by the changing socio-economic conditions. With increasing trade and investment across borders, it is important for all nations to be sufficiently invested in the multilateral processes of rule-making and dispute resolution, while at the same time offering a balanced response to the resulting complexities through our domestic legal systems. The reverse linkage is, of course, the impact of globalization on our respective legal systems. In the age of the internet and frequent international travel, judges, lawyers, academics, and even law students from different countries have a lot of opportunities to interact, collaborate, and learn from each other's experiences. In particular, I would like to comment on the growing importance of fields such as comparative constitutional law. Until a couple of years ago, much of discourse about the legal challenges arising out of economic globalization was centered on the multilateral efforts to promote international trade and investment. In this regard, there has been considerable scholarship on the dispute resolution functions of the World Trade Organization, as well as the role of arbitral institutions which facilitate dispute resolution in the event of commercial disputes between private parties located in different national jurisdictions. There has also been some attention given to the settlement of investment disputes between foreign investors and host governments. Hence, themes such as international trade law and investment law have become quite prominent in legal exchanges. However, the collapse of several financial institutions in recent times highlights the need for paying more attention to strengthening our domestic legal and regulatory systems before shifting the focus to multilateral negotiations and rulemaking in India. The retention of stringent governmental controls over the banking sector has mitigated the impact of the recession, but many export-dependent sectors have indeed faced some difficulties. For a country like ours, where financial sector reforms began only in the 1990s, there is an obvious need to adopt a pragmatic approach towards international trade and investment. There is no doubt that the progressive lowering of restrictions on foreign investment and private enterprise has led to the expansion of several sectors such as banking, telecommunications, information technology, broadcast media, and infrastructure, among others. The inflow of foreign capital and firms in these sectors has undoubtedly created many jobs, shaped an environment of competition, and increased the choices available to consumers. The expansion of these sectors has also created regulatory gaps which have been addressed through the creation of independent regulatory agencies. The task of these independent regulatory agencies is to assist in the formation of policies and devise rules to ensure a fair balance between the interests of service providers, consumers, and the government. Several specialized tribunals have also been set up for sectors such as telecom, securities regulation, and competition law to expeditiously decide disputes relating to these areas. However, there is no consistent correlation between the quantitative growth of foreign trade and investment on one hand and the indicators of social welfare and inclusive development on the other hand. Many economists have argued that the progressive financial sector reforms have only benefited the traditionally elite sections of society and that the trickle-down benefits for the masses have been negligible. Some have even argued that the forces of economic globalization have actually widened the existing socio-economic inequalities. A glaring symptom of the same is the rapidly increasing rates of migration between the rural areas and the urban centers. Cities such as Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, and Hyderabad, among others, have grown exponentially on account of the expansion of the services sector, which creates both well-paying jobs for qualified professionals as well as low-end jobs in the informal sector. Millions of people leave their countryside homes each year with the hope of better employment prospects. Instead, many of them end up living in even worse conditions in the cities where the infrastructure has not kept up with the rise in population. Our persistent failure to provide quality education and health care to a large part of our population further exacerbates the socio-economic inequalities in our society. There is a wide gap between the opportunities available to those who can speak the English language and operate computers as opposed to the rest of our people. Such inequity sometimes results in localized conflicts between the haves and the have-nots, which are often reinforced by traditional social divisions based on caste, religion, and regionalism. On account of such complex social realities, it becomes very difficult to gauge the substantive benefits of foreign trade and investment. In such a scenario, the onus is on the government and the legal system to devise strategies for ensuring a more equitable distribution of the pie. It is the concern with the prospects for our agricultural exports in foreign markets which has prompted India's vehement stand against the policy of export subsidies given to farmers in some Western countries. There is no principled opposition to the reduction of tariffs and other trade barriers which will enable more foreign firms to trade in goods and services in India. However, Western governments should also be willing to reciprocate by removing the unfair advantages given to their respective agricultural sectors. If the same is done, Indian farmers will be able to improve their earnings from exports and the same will translate into meaningful development for our rural communities. Even though the negotiations at the World Trade Organization seem to have been stalled at the moment, there is no ambiguity about the merits of free trade. The only condition is that both the developed and developing nations should be equally committed to the reduction of trade barriers. The construction of several large infrastructural projects as well as increasing investment in sectors such as steel manufacturing and mining has also created several legal complications. Especially in forested areas populated by tribal communities, several disputes have arisen from forcible land acquisition. Sometimes companies take advantage of the lack of awareness and bargaining power on part of tribal communities to displace them from their traditional lands. In fact, the use of deception and coercion to displace local communities from their lands is a practice that can be traced back to the colonial period. Such disputes that involve questions of adequate compensation, rehabilitation, and even environmental protection in some cases are amongst the foremost challenges for the Indian legal system today.